Hello and welcome to the magic of fishing. Today you join me in paradise. Fishing paradise anyway. It feels that way to me. I'm at the absolutely magnificent Frensham Little Pond. Although it's not really a pond and it's not very little. It's 30 acres in size. It has got a big brother and I'm yet to fish there, but this is my first time on Frensham Little Pond. It's run by Farnham Angling Society and it's owned by the National Trust, and it's an absolutely stunning lake. As you can see, I'm actually in the lake and most of the pegs here are set far back from where you actually fish. There's great big deep reed beds here which are a sanctuary for all kinds of bird life, and there is in fact a bird sanctuary here. I believe there's only around 15 pegs despite the huge size of the lake, and it's very popular with the public too. In this neck of the woods, there's beaches, almost sandy beaches, where you can bring the kids or the dog. But where I'm fishing today, apart from a few little aircraft taking off from the local airport and flying overhead, it's pure wilderness. I've not fished anywhere quite like it, apart from maybe Damflass Reservoir up in Sheffield when I was growing up. But I've actually had the shakes just walking around. This is fishing history, certainly carp fishing history. The likes of Chris Yates have fished here as a young man, and it's got some leany strain of carp. You can see I've gone a bit carpy today, a bit Spessy Hunter. And I'm going to do some fishing that isn't like the normal kind of fishing that I do. I've got a couple of rods, feeder rods, but I'm not going to fish the tip. I've bought my old carp buzzers, and I'm told there's some lovely tench in here, so I'm going to have a go for them on the feeder, 2 feeder rods. If it does get hectic, wouldn't that be nice? I can always switch or reduce down to 1 rod, but we'll start with 2. But before I go on the feeder, I'm going to give the waggler a go, and I love fishing in the water. I used to do it on the Trent, running a stick float down the inside line, and here I'll be fishing a waggler rod just, I don't know, 15 metres out in front of me, but I'm already probably 20 or 30 metres from the bank where I've left most of my gear, and I've set up in the water with a keep net just for the rod that hopefully will get on the float. I hear there's a lot of rod in here, they're like piranhas, but I've had to think about how I've come about fishing today and set up to fish in the water, which I've not done for ages. And here are some of the reed beds I was just talking about. You can see the vast expanse of water in front of me. I've actually set up just by a bay, and I don't think you can fish in there, I'm not sure, but I've come as far as peg 6, and let me quickly show you how we go about fishing in the water. I've got a couple of long rod rests with buzz bars on. At the moment just the waggler rod resting down the middle, but there'll be a couple of feeder rods there as an option later. I only bought the buzz bars and the alarms. I'm not a big fan of alarms since I gave up serious carp fishing many years ago, but we will be fishing till dark here. You're allowed to stay until 10:30 without a night ticket or a night booking. And today is the summer solstice. We're on the 21st of June. It's the longest day, and what a beautiful place to spend it. As a heron goes chasing over the lake. It's an absolutely beautiful day, blue sky, sometimes a bit of cloud cover, and here you can see the all-important bait station or waiter. I've not used one of these for years, but we've got 2 or 3 pints of hemp, 3 pints of castor, some dead reds for the feeder, and a few maggots for the hook. And I'm told you need a lot of feed here, so hidden under here is my ground bait bucket, and in there we've got a load of simple brown breadcrumb. It's actually dyed black, which I buy from Blake's Bait. So that's just black breadcrumb wetted down, quite a dry mix, and you can see there's plenty of dead reds and casters in there. But yeah, everything else I need is on here. Bait towel, GoPro about to get worn, plummet, catty, something to drink. I think the disgorger's under there somewhere too. But yeah, I've brought the keep net. It's not something I use a lot in my pleasure fishing, but I thought we can put together a few rod in a couple of hours before going on the feeder rod or rods. That might be nice to have a quick look at before we see if we can tempt any biggies. And I've been doing a couple of bits of feeding while setting up. I've been putting out a little bit of hempen caster right in front of me. It's only about 2 or 3 foot deep through a lot of the lake. I think it goes to about 4 foot in the middle some places, but yeah, right out in front I've got 2.5, 3 foot, just fishing a very light Drennan insert Visiwag, one number 8 down the line, size 18. And so I've been doing a bit of loose feeding out there, and then before I got all this set up I did a little bit of after I got this lot set up I did a bit of cage feeder baiting further out, a lot further out, fishing at range with the 2 feeders, and I whacked out a few big feed up feeders full of the brown crumb, hemp, caster and the dead reds. So quite a serious setup process, but now I'm ready to fish. It's 5:30, so we've got probably 4.5 hours before it gets dark. Stays light till going on 10 at this time of year. I absolutely love it. Can't believe I'm off work today as well. Blown away by this place. I think it's going to become a red hot favourite, but let's see how the fishing is. The sun is shining right into my face as well, and that's going to make seeing the float a little bit tricky, but I don't think it's going to stay above the surface very long. And I can see a silhouette of the tip, which is very nice. And there is my very first Frensham Ponds fish. Whoa, he's not going in the net, straight out the hand and back in. A little rod, 1 ounce or so, which that's what I've been told to expect to begin with. But we'll keep feeding and we might see some better fish. And if not, we've got feeder to give a go. Sun just going behind a cloud for once, and it's a bit like being in the Lake District. You're really out in the open, big skies, big expanse of water, lots of wildlife. And I've known about this water for a long time, probably since I was a boy, and reading about fishing in Angling Times and Angler's Mail. It's a really historic venue. Whoa! Not sure if I'm going to be able to show you any of these fish. Really lively golden rod. First in the net. But yeah, I used to read about it in fishing books or magazines back before the days of the internet. And then certainly when I moved down to Woking as a young man, I was aware of its existence because I'd come on walks around here, and it's just a beautiful spot, very sandy, lots of pine trees and other kinds of woodland. This could be hectic. And it's just a stunning place, and even then, for some reason, I didn't really think about fishing it, because I didn't think you could fish in such amazing places. I don't think I'd ever seen anyone fishing here when I happened to be on walks or using the beaches with Fred as a young toddler. But yeah, you know, earlier this year I joined Farnham Angling Society, because I really found myself with a bit more time on my hands than I've had for a long time as the kids are getting older. And secondly, I've really enjoyed creating this YouTube channel. And I thought, well, to make that a bit more interesting, I'm going to need a few more places to fish rather than just the Woking club waters that I was fishing since I came down here, or another small club that I've joined since with a bit of a river. It's one of those planes flies over. That really is the only noise to disturb the peace here. The closest angler to me is a good 3 or 4 minute walk down the path. Oh, that felt nice on the strike, a little bit bigger. Oh, and I do love fishing in the water. Until I lose the fish, that is. Pulled out a slightly better one there. But yeah, you sort of eye level with the float almost. And I'm really not having to chuck as far as you normally would on Waggler. It's a little flick out even against the wind. Sink the line and I'm fishing. And it looks like quite a few of the bites are going to come on the drop. Which is what you'd expect with rudd, of course. Now we've got a helicopter. But it really is a wild feeling place otherwise. All these reed beds mean you can't see to either side of yourself. And even to get down to the swim, number 6, as I say, it was down a little private path, or private feeling path. And it's alive with fish out there. I'm told there are some good pike in here, and I'm not much of a pike man. Barely caught any of them really. But yeah, standing in the water, reeling these silvers towards me. Let's hope one of the giants doesn't come up and give me a heart attack at any point. Oh, it's instant. Another one that I've bumped off. It is barbless hooks here, well, as with most of Farnham's waters. And I don't think there'll be many people with any lead shot in their tackle box now, but there's definitely no lead shot allowed on here because it's such a thriving bird sanctuary. That really is a tiddler. More perch than pike bait. Told there are some good perch in here. There's some huge old carp. I think there are still a few of the old ancient Leany strain, the same kind of carp that was stocked in Redmire, and a few other Surrey waters, as well as, or Surrey and Hampshire waters, as well as Frensham ponds. But to give you an idea, this lake, or this dammed estate lake, was originally dammed and created in something like the 1200s. And it's not like anywhere I'd fish growing up in Sheffield in that respect, because I did a little bit of reading up and I'm told it was created to be a stew or stock lake for food for Farnham Castle, nearby Farnham Castle, which is another interesting place. But to think that this has been around in some form for hundreds and hundreds of years and held carp even back then, as I understand it, it's incredible. It's full of history. I believe it was closed and actually drained during the Second World War and was used for tank training. So at some time it's not even had any water in it, but at least since the 40s Wow, it's a feeding frenzy out there. Can barely keep the float in the water. Let me brush up my skills and I'll come back to you shortly. Just look at this for summer evening light on the longest day, just filtering through the clouds. But yeah, really does make the water look gold, liquid gold. And I wouldn't say I've cracked the rod completely. I think they could drive a man insane. But I have now got into a bit of a rhythm, which fishing like this is all about, really. Just finding your rhythm and getting in the zone. I've been casting and striking so often the top section of the rod was getting a bit loose. I've actually got the anti-reverse on now. In other words, locking the reel up tight so I can't backwind. I don't think there are any fish that are going to crack me off on 2 pound bottom, or certainly not in this shoal anyway. And it just means I can strike a bit quicker and a bit more gently. It's a weird balance of quick but gentle. Strike too hard or powerfully, you kind of bump them off. If you're too slow, you miss them altogether. Not had anything over 3 or 4 ounces, but it's really, really enjoyable fishing. The float just doesn't stay above the water, sorry. I'll tell you what, if anyone's watching who's in the club or thinking about joining the club and lives in this area, and you've had a few blanks, whether you're a carper or a matchman, if you've had some tough sessions, get yourself along to Frensham Little Pond, because it is Bite City. Really active fishing, even if they're not big. And I did actually have one swirl as a fish was being jumped along the surface towards me, so I think we may have at least a jack pike in the area. Float never came up that time. I've been to some pretty packed commercial fisheries where the fish really are stuffed in unnatural numbers and density, where You know, for the price of a day ticket, you can get plenty of bites and get your string pulled, but a completely natural venue like this, and it is absolutely solid with these rod. What does that say about the water quality and the health of this fishery? It's remarkable. And of course, when you've had a fishery established for decades, certainly since the Second World War, the end of the Second World War, like this has been, it's had chance to get really balanced, and you'll have the pike to try and keep the numbers down a little bit, and the perch and the carp and the tench to compete for the food sources. But what a fishery to sustain numbers of fish like this. I've never seen anything like it. Seriously, fish swirling everywhere. What I'm doing with the feed is just going heavy every 5 minutes or so. 2 or 3 pouches, and I've started feeding them in closer and closer so that I can just flick the float over my left shoulder. You can see them swirling. It's mad to think that I'm stood in the water with them. Just draw the float back over, not sinking the line. It's instant. And okay, you might not want to do this every day or all day, but for an evening's fishing, as the appetizer, we hope, for a couple of tench, can't beat this. And again, that golden light. Well, hello again. I've just been wading back to the shore, to base camp, to see one of the bailiffs, Dave, who was very friendly, more of a carper, and he did point out to me that my earlier claim that there might be 1 or 2 of the original Leany fish in here was probably wrong. They would be around 70 years old, if so, he pointed out. He said there was a tiny chance of one of them still being around. But yeah, he said some fish stocked in the 80s pushed them out really, and there's still a few of the old 1980s stock around. Some very big carp in here. One, he said, well over 40, or over 40 anyway. Doing my usual angling thing and exaggerating a little bit, but yeah, he did say 40 plus. Again, I've not carp fished seriously for many years, but it just adds to the mystery and magic of this place. So let's have another half hour, 15 minutes rod bashing, and then we'll get the feeder rods out and hope for a tench. He said there's a chance they might have started spawning. Saw some earlier, but he did say there's a lot in here and I've still got every chance. So can't wait to give that a try. 20 more minutes of craziness on the waggler, and then we'll do that. I don't think I've fished anywhere with quite such a beautiful sky as backdrop. Certainly not this year. It's incredible. And now we're well into June. I've had a couple of days on the river. You've hopefully seen those videos. But one of the interesting things about Frensham ponds, the little pond that I'm on now and the big boy, oops, great pond, is they have a traditional closed season on them, just like the river season. So if you're wondering why I'd been a member of Farnham for several months and hadn't been here up until now, it is because I had to wait for the traditional season to start. And although it's hard to believe, I did want to prioritise the rivers over this. I also wondered whether it might be a bit crazy and busy for the first weekend, and Dave the bailiff was just saying it was surprisingly okay. There were a good few anglers on, lots of tench coming out, but it wasn't absolutely packed. And again, it's hard for a northern boy like me to believe that a venue as beautiful as this and as prolific as this with the fish could be quiet. I suppose we've got a lot of river anglers. I hope we've got a lot of river anglers amongst us. And that would have been perhaps priority for the first week, like it was for me. All I can hear is birdsong. Or bird calls in the case of some of them. There's grebes, terns, swans, herons, and everything in between. And the waves or ripples slapping against the bucket or the underside of the ground bait bucket remind me of a marina. Sounds like the hull of a boat. It's a very evocative place. Never fished anywhere quite like it. I know I compared it to Dam Flask, but really just in terms of beauty and openness. Never really fished in the water at Flask because it shelved off. Being a reservoir, it really shelved off steeply. And this is a unique and I suspect very memorable experience. My first time on here. Sun just coming out from behind the clouds. The shade's back on. Missed it that time. But yeah, if you're not in this part of the world, or you're not a member of this club, I just hope you're enjoying watching it with me. And watch me drop fish after fish straight back in the drink. It's one of the things I aim to do with this channel. It's just bring you to some beautiful places like this. I'm very conscious I'm lucky to live somewhere within half an hour's drive of somewhere like this. Well, we are out on the feeder rods. Really exciting. The sky's actually clouded over a bit and the sun is still behind the clouds. They're not thick. Casting a really eerie light over the place now, more silvery than gold. And it really is an atmospheric place. Just constant ripple on it. It's not going calm as I thought it might do as time went on, although there's still plenty of time for fishing. It's coming up to 8:30. Tiny bit of a nip in the air now with the sun in and going down, but it's nice actually to have stopped the float fishing and just have time to take it all in. Obviously I hope we might get some action on the feeder rods too before the session's over, but it's obviously a much more sedate pace of fishing. Little beat there. I've got them turned down as low as possible, and if we do get a fair bit of action, I'll turn the buzzers off and just go off the bobbins. No one likes hearing the constant noise of buzzers over a lake. It's okay if it's a fish taking, but if it's just bobbins dropping up and down liners and what have you, it can get a bit irritating. It's really exciting with this wind coming on, the waves, proper wild fishing. Just hoping there's a few tench out there feeling hungry and not obsessed with spawning. And we are in on the right hand rod. I'm going to move a little over to the right because the other line's still out. In fact, no, I'm not, because yes, the fish has probably gone through that line. I think we've hopefully got him over it. It's wading further into the lake. Definitely feels tenchy. Real bend in the rod. Lovely Avon style rod. £1.25 test curve. Oh wow. Tench right by where I'm standing comes to the surface. And we got him. He looks like a decent fish. That is a lovely, lovely fish. Let's have a look at him. Well, I almost feel a bit emotional because I wasn't sure whether I'd get one this evening or not, but we've only been out on the feeder for 10 minutes and that is an absolutely stunning first tench from Frensham Little Pond. Look at that for a paddle tail. Really solid fish. Give a proper look. Look at that for a tench. Beautiful. Let's get him back. Talk about smile on the face. That is the big one. Absolutely made up with that. Let's get the rod back out again. Really dramatic sky and dramatic fishing. Just look at that for a sky. It's like a painting that just changes all the time. Might not get to see a sunset with this many clouds around, but still some way off. It's 9 o'clock or 10 to 9 and still tons of light. You've got to love this time of year. This is what you dream of in spring, or certainly in the depths of winter. Fishing on a balmy June evening, the longest day of the year. Having just put a nice big tench back. So peaceful. One thing that's... Ooh, I've got fish jumping out around my waders. One of the bobbins just twitching. Alarm sounding. I was just going to say, if you do fish a helicopter rig and you've not tried it before, really good for tangle-free presentation and self-hooking. It's not something I've fished a lot of, to be honest, but there's plenty of videos on YouTube to help you understand how to type the rig. Good for distance fishing. And I was just going to say, one important thing is to use a nice forgiving rod, and also don't strike. Ooh, talking of striking, might need to do that in a second. Got a pellet on the left hand rod, and that's the one that's just been twitching quite a bit. Oh, is it going to go? I might be able to visually show you my advice, which is don't strike too hard. Just lift the rod up if you do get a take, because you're fishing with a really short hook length. And although I'm using 7-pound breaking strain nylon, it's only 2 or 3 inches long, that hook length, so not a lot of stretch or give in it. And if you're after big fish like bream or tench, you don't want to be whacking the rod up as if you're striking on a feeder or a normal feeder rod or a waggler or a stick float or any other kind of fishing, just because of that really short hook length. There's obviously plenty of stretch in your main line, but you can knock fish off, or even worse, get a break off. So yeah, just lift into the fish rather than a strike. It's incredible how light it is. I think you can just see the sun there going down behind those trees. But out in front it's still blue, or a bit of blue. Incredible scenery and backdrop. One thing I will say for buzzers or bite alarms is that, unlike a quiver tip or a float, you don't need to keep your eyes pinned to them almost all the time. They do allow you to look around, whether that's to try and spot fish activity or just take in the splendour of your natural surroundings like I am. It really is a magical place. It's got an atmosphere. You can almost feel the history. And I know a lot of that is in your mind, but when the sky looks as dramatic as this and the warm wind is blowing in your face and the sun's going down, you can't help but imagine and appreciate. So I'll give buzzers that. And as always, I'm really chuffed to have you along with me, to be able to share all this. You know I love getting your comments, so whether you're new to the channel or an old faithful, please do feel free to share your thoughts or just say hello. There's a grebe swims out into my line of sight. But what a special evening, the longest day, 9 o'clock. To think we've probably got another hour. What I'd give for that on many a shorter day. I've not had any other bites since that tench, the first fish, but even if that's the only one, I won't be complaining. It's a remarkable place to spend an evening. It's a good chuck out there, and I clipped up both rods before using them to put some feed out. Hard to believe it's nearly 9:30. Still loads of light left. And I think while there is a bit of light left, we'll let these little rod go and put the net back up to dry while we continue fishing. And for 3 maggots, what self-respecting tench could refuse that? We've just been to get the head torch. As I often point out, these modern cameras can pick up a lot of light, but even without the camera I can still see clearly, and it's 5 to 10. Although it happens every year, it's always hard to believe, and I think if you've spent a few evenings indoors or somewhere less spectacular than this, you might not have noticed how incredibly long the days are at this time of year. It's marvellous. And of course we should get the best part of a month of really light evenings now. It plateaus off through the rest of June and into July. Have a good few weeks of really long days before they start getting shorter again. Lots and lots of bleeps, as you can hear. Could be rudd. I've got to say I've not seen any fish activity, whether they be tench or carp. And when I was talking to the bailiff earlier, he said some evenings the lake's alive with tench, tails flopping over and slapping the water and backs coming out. And he did say it was like that a week ago around the opening day, and then talked about how he thought he'd seen them spawning earlier today. So not making excuses, but it could explain why it's been a little bit quiet since we had that first and what could be the only tench. Dual bleeps, both rods twitching, so I'm still holding out for one more, and we've probably got another 20 minutes or so before we have to pack up. You've got to be off the water around 10:30 if you've not arranged otherwise with the bailiffs, and I think that's pretty reasonable. I'll have to get back here and do a full day or an early morning or just another evening like this. It's really whet my appetite, but it's also been one of those days when even if I hadn't caught anything, I'd be going home a happy man. Well folks, we come to the end of another magical session. Absolutely brilliant. I can't quite believe it's nearly 10:30, and although the light is on the camera now, there's still birds flying around and I can see quite clearly. The rods are still out and you might hear the odd bleep in the background, but no more runs, no more tench. We had all those rudd to make up for that, and yeah, I'll be back here again giving it another go before too long, I really hope. If you're not a member of this very special club, then what you're waiting for? Hit that subscribe button and join us for many more videos like this. And to all you regular members, thanks so much for your support as always. Give it a thumbs up, tell your mates, and I'll look forward to seeing you again soon on the bank or in the water.